And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment from very, very high above all the insipid and puerile forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Thursday, the last program of this week. Oh, and, in case you didn't know, tomorrow I'm hopping on a plane to fly to Salt Lake City to speak at the John Birch Society National Conference. Really looking forward to it. Sounds like it's going to be a great time. And, come on. Why wouldn't you want to export Cowboy State Politics to other states? Lots of mountain states have the same issues, namely redcoats. Redcoats running all over the place. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. Well, mostly how to get rid of redcoats. Oh, and by the way, speaking of redcoats, I don't often get into these social media back and forths with people. They're just endless, right? Everybody's courageous when they're sitting behind a keyboard. But when they have to come out in the open, sometimes, just sometimes, they get a little bit more timid. So, today on the program, I need your advice. I need your help. Should I dig up the great article that I wrote about lobbyists in the legislature? The one where a certain registered lobbyist took over the office of the Speaker Pro Tem in absolute violation of Wyoming statute. That article, the one where we exposed what did I call her? Old Red. Yeah. Old Red and her pal Joanne True. Should I bring that article up again? I've been having a little back and forth over the evening with Shane True. He seems to think that the open range record lacks credibility, and it's just a blog. It's what these leftists do. It's the tried and true tactic of just slinging insults and having absolutely nothing to back it up. So what I need you to do is, in the comments today, you tell me if you think we ought to talk about lobbyists in the legislature and what truly happened in the Speaker Pro Tem's office. But first, it's Open Line Thursday. That's right, my friends. It is Open Line Thursday on Cowboy State Politics. This is a different day than normally. You see, most of the time on a Thursday, you kind of have to talk about what I want to talk about. Not so today. Today, it's Open Line Thursday, and we'll talk about whatever's been a little bit of a burr underneath your saddle, what's been gnawing at you. Go ahead and give me a call. The phone number here in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989 is the number here in the studio. Whatever you've been thinking about, whatever's been eating at you, well, go ahead and give me a call. One more time, that phone number is 307-374-8989. I'll keep the phone lines open all program long. And so if you want to talk about something, let me know. At the top of the second hour, we're going to be joined by candidate for House District 1, Zeta Nuckolls Anderson. She's running to replace Speaker Chip Nyman in the House of Representatives, as he's quickly working on defeating Ogden Driscoll in the Senate. So anyway, we're going to talk to her at the top of the hour. Should be a fantastic conversation, I would think. But anyway, it would seem, and, again, any questions you got, any thoughts you have, either go ahead and put them in the comments, and we'll talk that way, or you can call me at 307-374-8989. Well, it would appear that Breitbart has finally discovered Eric Barlow. I mean, I've been waiting on this one for a while for the national media to get a hold of a alleged GOP gubernatorial candidate and expose his very liberal record. But it's finally happened, and I can't be more, well, maybe I could be more excited. But I'm pretty stoked about this one. Saw this article last night posted on Breitbart. Right now, it's in their trending articles. Let me just show you. Let's see your screen share. Maybe we can. Here we go. Yeah. Allow. Here we go. So right there he is. Wyoming GOP gubernatorial candidate voted against MAGA's illegal immigration crackdown. I mean, this isn't just a one-off deal for him. Eric Barlow only voted with, and I want to show you the statistics a little bit later on in the program, but I mean, he pretty much only voted with the Republican majority a little over 20% of the time. So yeah, if there was an illegal immigration bill that came up, he's definitely going to vote against it. I mean, that's what he does. If there's conservative legislation in front of him, he either puts it in his drawer with his other drawers, or he just votes against it. And so now I'm pleased to announce that the national media has finally caught up to us. I mean, we've been talking about this for, well, ever since Eric Barlow's been in the legislature. I mean, he's such a convenient target. The guy that claims to be a conservative and yet votes with the Democrats an average of 80% of the time. Let's see here. Breitbart News. And I quote, despite consistently being the state with the highest approval rating for President Donald Trump, one of Wyoming's leading Republican candidates for governor, Eric Barlow, has repeatedly voted against bills in line with the MAGA movement's crackdown on illegal immigration. Barlow, a state senator who formerly served as Speaker of the House of Representatives, has sided with Democrats when it comes to sanctuary cities, blocking illegal aliens from public benefits, and just about everything, every measure that would have prevented illegal aliens from taking advantage of Wyoming. I mean, Eric Barlow is all about it. I mean, he is a Democrat. I mean, in the truest sense of the word, it just so happens that he has that R at the end of his name. Other Trump Republicans in the race ahead of the August Republican primary election include Trump-endorsed Megan Felder, who has been the state superintendent of public instruction since 2003, and retired Marine Corps Colonel Brent Behan, who's also seeking the nomination. As a state representative in 2016, Barlow voted no on HB 135, a bill that would have restricted public welfare programs to American citizens and lawful residents, ensuring that illegal immigrants do not take advantage of state public benefits. Furthermore, the then representative also voted against bills that would have banned sanctuary cities and counties in Wyoming 3 years in a row, 2018, 2019, and 2020. Barlow only officially changed his position on banning sanctuary cities in 2025, voting in favor of HB 133, which successfully became law. Still, some of Barlow's votes remained opposed to the mainstream conservative view on immigration even after Trump began his second term as president. In February of 2025, Barlow voted no on an omnibus immigration bill that would have created penalties for transporting, hiding, or hiring illegal aliens, requiring citizenship or lawful status checks for public benefits, and pushed state law enforcement to cooperate with immigration customs enforcement. In February, Senate File 124 would have also required people to prove their citizenship to obtain driver's licenses and state ID cards, which contributes to election integrity. You know, if I had to guess, I would say that one of the other people running for governor dropped this little gem in the lap of Breitbart. I mean, who else is going to trudge through Wild and try to find all of this data? But it's absolutely true. I mean, Eric Barlow has, for the length of his career, voted consistently with the Democrat Party. I mean, and it's plain as the big nose on his face. Or the 10-gallon hat that he wears. The only difference is he actually has cattle. But anyway, many of the strongest supporters and friends in Wyoming have been calling and telling me how great MAGA Dagenfeller is. This is what Trump's post says. Because she's considering launching a campaign. Now, this is what leads me to believe that this was Megan Felder's campaign that dropped this in the lap of Breitbart. But to their credit, by the way, all of these things that all these redcoats have done in the state. And, I mean, there's a bunch of them running for office. Eric Barlow, Steve Harshman, a whole bunch of them. I mean, they have a very, very, very long track record of voting in line with Democrat priorities. And they just assume that you're going to forget all about them and vote for them anyway. When Barlow had his little and I'm going to see if I can find a soundbite here, because I think I have a piece of sound from Eric Barlow's campaign announcement. Let's see here if I've got it. I don't on this device, but anyway, when he launched his campaign, he stood in front of his family and friends and swore up and down that he was a conservative. And I couldn't believe the stuff that was coming out of his mouth. I will defend the sanctity of life. Not really. There's an article on the Open Range Record that takes a hard look at Barlow's pro-life record, which isn't very good. When he was Speaker of the House, every pro-life bill that he could think of went in his drawer. When he was the chairman of a committee, he was usually the chairman of the Labor and Health Committee. Pretty much every pro-life bill that he could get away with went in his drawer. He voted against the trigger bill that would have outlawed abortion after the Roe v. Wade decision. And then, that was on the first reading. I think he voted against it. And then when he knew it was going to pass and he knew that he was going to be on the record for it, he voted for it. You see, that's what he does. When it's a vote that people are going to notice, well, then he votes the right way. When he can get away with it, when he's Speaker of the House, when he's chairman of the committee, he puts it in his drawer. So you can only imagine what he's going to do with any pro-life bill that would hit his desk if he ended up being the governor. I mean, that would spell the end of any pro-life legislation in Wyoming. I mean, the courts wouldn't even have a chance to strike it down. Eric Barlow would take care of it ahead of time. So, he's not a conservative guy, never has been, never will be. And again, if you ask him, he'll swear up and down that he is the conservatives' conservative. Now, there's a piece in the Turkey Vulture about the gubernatorial debate that was held in Campbell County, the one that setting the bar low, Barlow, or, I've had other names, like desk drawer Barlow. That's where his conservative values and every pro-life bill ends up in his desk drawer, which, by the way, interesting oddity about the Wyoming legislature. The drawer that everybody talks about isn't actually a drawer. It's a locking cabinet. It's got, doors on it, and it's got two bins in it. Not actually a drawer, but it does have a lock on it. And if you're the Speaker of the House or the President of the Senate, you can absolutely grab entire files of bill and lock them away. And that's literally what happens. So each bill in the legislature has its own file. And everything that happened on that bill, whether it be an amendment or a vote or even a procedural vote, whatever, it goes into that file. And so if the Speaker of the House or the President of the Senate wants to pull a bill, they will take that entire file and they physically lock it away so that nobody can get near it. And there's only one way that you can pull that out of the Speaker's locking cabinet. It doesn't quite have the same ring to it as the Speaker's drawer. But anyway, the only way that you can pull that is with a 2/3 vote. So in this piece about the debate, which Barlow did not attend, that's his new campaign strategy: not show up to anything, not make a public appearance, and just think that you're going to vote for him. At least that's what he did at the Republican convention. He was actually in the building when he recorded a video of himself saying how great the convention was and how pleased he was to be a part of it. And then not that long after, he was to give a speech in front of the entire convention. Instead, he asked them to play the video that he recorded inside the convention hall. And then, of course, the debate in Campbell County, he claimed to have had another engagement. And so here's what the Turkey Vulture says in their defense of Eric Barlow. And I quote, Barlow's campaign team posted a statement to Facebook and in an email to the News Record that said his campaign has had a scheduling conflict. That's what he always says. I have a scheduling conflict. Sorry, can't make it. That was made months in advance. Quote, the invitation came after our campaign calendar had already been committed across Wyoming for months. And so there's no room for anything that comes up in Eric Barlow's schedule. Not a bit. Nope. You cannot change the schedule whatsoever, even if it's something important like the Republican convention. Well, of course, he was there. He just didn't have time for the speech. He had to go somewhere, had to be somewhere, had a prior commitment. Nope. Couldn't stand up and talk to Wyoming Republicans. Anyway. So I will not be able to attend this event, the email read. Campbell County is home, and it has been a privilege to serve Gillette, Campbell County, and Wyoming for many years. I look forward to continuing the conversation with Campbell County voters in the weeks and months ahead. Only if it aligns with his rigid schedule, though. Now, Barlow was previously scheduled to be in Johnson County at the time of the debate. So what? It's Johnson County. It's a debate in your home county. You ought to be there. Let's see here. Now, the one interesting part of this is, there's a couple of, here we go. There's a couple of interesting pieces in the Turkey Vulture scat. So let's see here. They were talking about adherence to the Republican Party platform. And I think we've all heard this, that the Wyoming Republican Party says you have to follow the Republican Party platform at least 80% of the time, which I don't know how you judge that. I mean, there's rating sites. If you have a voting record, that's easy. You just go through the votes that you've made and figure out which ones line up with the platform. And interestingly enough, there is a website that already does that for you. So you don't really have to worry about it. If you're a legislator, it's all done. And, there are people you have people, Eric, that will handle these delicate tasks for you. So here's what he said. Now, he couldn't attend the debate, but he was obviously watching it on Facebook. Now, during a discussion on Republicans following the platform, let me back up like a paragraph. Let's see here. Moderator Laura Cox asked both candidates participating in the debate to pledge that they would uphold at least 80% of the Wyoming Republican Party platform. Being suggested that so-called Republicans should be expelled from the party if they don't uphold the party platform. Only in the Mountain West would Democrats. And I shouldn't say this. I'm sure there are Democrats elsewhere that register as Republicans, but it seems pretty pervasive in the Mountain West. And Wyoming, Utah, South Dakota, Montana, Idaho, all those states, we all have the same problem, that it's very difficult to get elected if you're a Democrat, and so Democrats register as Republicans, and they get elected that way because we all know that. Perhaps up until this year, but still I would say that most voters just don't have the time to research all these candidates. That's why this show exists, so that I can inform you of who these people are. Anyway, we all have this problem of Democrats registering as Republicans, and they're redcoats. I mean, that's all they are. So there was that discussion going on. Now, Barlow's Facebook account posted a statement as the debate carried on. So again, he's at a campaign event that he can't miss, but he can post on Facebook. I wonder if he was standing in front of Johnson County voters with his phone, like, hold on just a second, hold that thought. I got to respond to something that's happening in the debate. I didn't have time to be there, but I can respond on Facebook. Hold on. Okay, yeah, they'll like that comment. I don't know what was happening, but here's what he said. Quote, My record, and I'm going to try to do this with a straight face. My record demonstrates a consistent commitment to Wyoming conservative principles, the statement read. I voted in alignment with the Republican Party platform more than 80% of the time, supporting policies that promote individual liberty, fiscal responsibility, economic growth, and accountable government. I don't know what to say, my friends, except for that's the biggest load of bullcrap I've ever heard in my life. Now, let me show you. Now, and he says that he's voted in, with the Republican Party platform more than 80% of the time. And it is, now, why does it, I wonder why it does that. Anyway, so hold on a minute. The screen's going to look a little goofy for a second. Okay, here we go. So now, up at the top, you'll see where it says, my record demonstrates a consistent commitment to Wyoming conservative principles. And the highlighted part, I have voted in alignment with the Republican Party platform more than 80% of the time. Just so happens, we have a couple of websites in Wyoming that track these sorts of things. Now, WyoRhino, they track how often a politician's adherence to the Republican Party platform. And so what they do is they pick 10 bills. And, I know that they get accused of cherry picking bills, but really they do a pretty good job of picking bills that sort of run the gamut. But you can see there that according to WyoRhino, Eric Barlow voted only 10% of the time with the Republican Party platform. Not 80, 10. And down at the bottom, you'll see evidence-based Wyoming. And the only thing that evidence-based Wyoming does is it tracks how often you vote with the Republican majority and how often you vote with the Democrat majority. That's all that it does. And there's a tremendous amount of conclusions that you can draw out of that. And you can see there that during the last legislative session, Eric Barlow only voted with the Republican majority 27.6% of the time. 27.6, my friends. Not 80, not 70, not anywhere close. 27.6. And see, what he's counting on is that you will not go check his voting record, or that you're not going to go check the voting records of any of these people. That's why we have rating sites such as WyoRhino, Evidence-Based Wyoming, WyoVote. There's several of them. And of course, there are a number of different partisan organizations that have their own rating system. Just because I'm going to speak at the JBS conference tomorrow, the John Birch Society has their own rating system, and theirs is how much do you adhere to constitutional principles. And I mean, they only pick 6 issues because they've got the entire country to worry about. So I don't know how comprehensive it is, but there's a world of difference between 80% being, following the platform and actually being a Republican and voting with the Republicans only 27.6% of the time. Or with the platform 10% of the time. I wonder if some of these people, ever look in the mirror because the amount of lying that goes on, and it's not even, we're not even talking about, maybe stretching the truth a little bit. We're not talking about spinning a vote. When you only side with the Republican Party 27% of the time, and you claim, no, I vote with the Republican Party platform over 80% of the time, that isn't even close to the truth. Now, maybe we could give him a little bit of leeway on some of those, on some of the votes, because I'll be the first to admit that some bills, not very many, some bills in the legislature are a little bit more complicated than just, black or white. But, on the issue, that is. However, it is really easy to determine which one, whether a bill follows the platform or it doesn't. That's not hard at all. If a bill is not following constitutional principles, if it's, writing gun control into Wyoming law, which is another thing that Eric Barlow has done, his so-called restoration of rights bill, which, by the way, what that did is it put hundreds of former felons at risk of being thrown in jail because the state sent out certificates to all these people who were felons, saying that their rights had been restored. And so many of them went and got their guns back because that's what the certificate said. And then we had the ATF raid here in Bighorn. So, I mean, the guy doesn't have anything to back that statement up. Let's get a comment in here. Jerry says that Democrats registering as a Republican mirrors Democrats saying a man can become a woman. I couldn't agree with you more, Jerry. I mean, that is absolutely the truth. And it's fascinating because it's usually the Democrats that are in support of this whole LGBTQ ZXPWDS agenda. But when you watch what happens on the floor, there are a number of your elected representatives and senators who claim to be Republican and on the other hand swear up and down that a man can become a woman or a trout or a rhinoceros. No, wait a minute. They're already rhinos. But anyway, Eric Barlow, definitely not a Republican. And for the turkey vulture to let him get away with that just shows you, I mean, whose camp they're in. I mean, that almost the entirety of the Wyoming media is owned lock, stock, and barrel by the Wyoming left. I mean, it's the same holds true for the rest of the country. And, I mean, that's why this show exists. That's why the Open Range Record exists, to print the truth, who, by the way, that word keeps coming up, true. I wonder if anything that Shane True says is actually true. So if you're just joining the program, what I started with is I got into this little Facebook spat back and forth with Shane True, yes, of the True family. And the question of the day is, should I dig up the old article about Joanne True hanging out, being a registered lobbyist and hanging out in the Speaker Pro Tem's office? You think I ought to dig that article back up again and spruce it up a bit and publish it on the Open Range Record? Let me know in the comments. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to show you I could have a full-time job just refuting what happens on the cow pie. I try not to do that. I mean, it would get boring after a while, but again, Jake in the cow pie, he's covered in it this morning, and we'll talk about it when we come back. Are you sick to death of being told what to think? Maybe you don't even realize that it's happening. Freedom Caucus bad, big spending, big government, liberal, Republican good. Conservatives are bad and they want to starve little children. I have heard it all, my friends. We are way past the time when the news was just the news, if it ever was. But wouldn't it be nice if you had a news platform that was at least honest about what they were telling you? News on the news page, opinion on the opinion page. That's exactly what the Open Range Record is. Go to the website, openrangerecord.com. News, analysis, opinion, and investigative journalism. One more time, that website is openrangerecord.com. You can listen and watch Cowboy State Politics live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble every Tuesday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pay attention to all that other block-headed, Borg-like so-called news if you want. But if you want to get the real story, watch Cowboy State Politics live. And now, back to the program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Thursday. I'm David Iverson, getting primed to hop on a jet to Salt Lake City tomorrow. Don't even think about playing that song. I'm leaving. No, see, I shouldn't even have brought it up. Welcome back to the program, my friends. It is Open Line Thursday on the show, so the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. This morning on the Cow Pie, one of the founders of the Frontier Republicans, blowhard Tom Lubnow, was on with Jake in the Cow Pie. And they were trying to compare the Wyoming Republican Party State Central Committee to the Chinese Communist Party. And see, this is what they have to do. And it happens every election season. Republican Party bad. All these people who are not associated, don't do anything with the Republican Party, hardly ever show up to any Republican event. They're good. But anybody who's conservative, very bad. And in fact, see, in Wyoming, they probably figure that just calling all of us Hitler is a little bit tired and worn out. And so they have to switch it up and say that we're all akin to the Chinese Communist Party. Let me tell you why I think that is. During the last election, I did an investigation into Chi-Com Som, Albert Sommers, the former Speaker of the House. He was running for the Senate in that election. And it turns out that he was also on the board of this organization called the State Legislative Leaders Foundation, which is run by a guy named Robin Vos. Robin Vos is the Speaker of the House in Wisconsin. He is a very, very, very bad guy. And so that organization, and remember, Chi-Com Som is on the board of it. They have a direct relationship to the Chinese Communist Party. Documented, and if you have any question about any of this, all of the documents you need to back this up are on cowboystatepolitics.com. But anyway, did a thorough investigation of that. Now, do I think that Albert Sommers is directing things to the Chinese? I really don't think he's smart enough to do that. But anyway, there's only a couple of possibilities there. Either Albert doesn't know anything about the relationship that organization has with the Chinese, and he's just completely oblivious, which is really bad because it means he inadvertently got us involved with the Chinese. The second possibility on that one is that he knows about it, but he doesn't care. And he's just adding another line to his resume. Now, that one's a little bit worse, right? That you don't give a crap that if you've embroiled your state in a relationship with the Chinese Communist Party. Or the third possibility is that he knew about it and he was absolutely in favor of it. Now, that one's really bad. Well, he ended up not winning that election, and it was a big deal in that part of the state. I mean, there were numerous Facebook posts. He even wrote a column called, I am not a Chinese spy. Yeah, nobody's accusing you of that, Albert. We're just saying that you're complicit with it and that, you're on the board of an organization that absolutely does have ties to it. So that was very, very, very effective. And, with Trump being the president, and there are a lot of headlines about the Chinese. So this kind of makes sense to the redcoats. To say that, all these people, they're like the Chinese. And they think, and people like Tom Lubnow think you are dumb enough to buy that whole shtick. And so that's what they were doing on the Cow Pie this morning here. We're going to watch a little bit of it, and we're going to have to do a stop and start on it because, again, I'm just not going to be able to take it. But here is Tom Lubnow, blowhard Tom Lubnow, founder of the Frontier Republicans, and he's talking to Jake, who is covered in Cow Pie.
Let's change gears a little bit, talk about another column of yours, recent Freedom Caucus, the comparison of the Freedom Caucus to the Chinese Communist Party. At first glance, those two don't look like they share anything, but Tom highlights a couple things. I can think of one thing. Either CCP or FC. If you step out of line, there's zero tolerance for that.
All right, stop. What the heck does that mean? That somehow if you step out, if there's a vote that's wrong, they're just going to kick you out. What? I have no idea what the guy is talking about. That you step out of line, they're going to mousy dung your butt. What? No, I mean, I don't. There's no examples of that. But what that brief segment shows you is exactly where the cow pie is. That they're very much anti-Freedom Caucus. That they're not conservative at all. Even though in the cow pie segment I played you yesterday, Claire McFarland tried to play up and down that she is really not. All you got to do is read any of her writing to find that out. But that's how they begin the segment. The Freedom Caucus is like the Chinese Communist Party. Right. Here we go.
Wyoming Republican Party. It's the State Central Committee, which is elected precinct committee people, and then the precinct committee people elect a state committee man and a state committee woman, and then so there's 3 from every county, and then elected leaders who, through their bylaws, they've changed to be able to vote and hold office, and they do have. I mean, if you step out of line, I mean, I was on the State Central Committee as an elected state committee man from Campbell County, and I'd done it twice. I'd done it in the late 80s, and I'd done it until a few years ago. And when they passed their secret court system, I resigned.
Okay, all right, stop right there. There's quite a bit of history that Tom Lubnow is leaving out. Lubnow was one of the founding members of the Frontier Republicans. And, new listeners to the program, you may not be aware of what this group is. But it was years ago, probably prior to 2016, the Wyoming Republican Party was controlled by the Redcoats. Straight up, very liberal Republicans. Deemer True, weird, that name keeps coming up today, and True. Anyway, Deemer True was the chairman for a while. Matt Michaeli, he's the guy that got the party fined by the FEC, or IRS or FEC, one of them. Anyway, we were fined $50,000. But it was controlled by the Redcoats. Most of the county parties, it was all of the insiders who were elected precinct people. And this is part of what I'm going to talk about in Salt Lake on Saturday. But conservatives in each county got together and they decided, you know what, we've had enough of these Redcoats. We're going to win precinct seats and we're going to take back the party. And that's what they did. And right around, I think it was in the 2016 election, that conservatives took back the party. And then in 2018 at the convention, there was a big blow up, and it was Natrona County. And they pretty much started most of it. But there was an attempt by the Redcoats. And at this time, the Frontier Republicans had just started forming. Anyway, those folks who had been in power tried their best to derail the convention and prevent us from electing presidential electors. It was a big deal because, it was during Trump's first election. So I guess it was in the 2016. No, it was 2018. Anyway, I can't remember. Anyway, it was a big blow up at the convention, and it was all the Redcoats doing it. Well, 2019, 2020, then Tom Lubnow, Gail Simmons, Doug Camblin, Pinocchio Joe McGinley in Casper, they all get together and they form this group called Frontier Republicans. And they tried their darndest to elect people who were absolutely liberal to precinct positions so that they could try to take back the party. And it progressed to such a point where it was a very open fight. And Tom Lubnow was right in the middle of it. There were, let's see, I remember two or three state central committee meetings where Tom was pretty involved, that he got up and spoke a lot on different motions. And so he didn't really, and he can tell his own reasons for leaving, for resigning or whatever he did, not running for a precinct position again. But really what happened is he was part of the disaffected group of liberal Republicans that were not in power anymore. So literally Tom Lubnow took his ball and went home. That's what happened. Now, right where I stopped it, he's talking about this secret court. Now, really, what he's talking about is the Dispute Resolution Committee. It's in the Republican Party's bylaws, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, but almost all private organizations have some sort of arbitration that you go through. If you have a complaint, you go through them, and they try to settle it as a private organization. And even though people like Tom Lubnow complain about this because it hamstrings them from taking their grievance to a court, That was what the judge said. That one of the reasons why the lawsuit by the Natrona County Republican Party against the state was proceeding is there was no dispute resolution process within the Republican Party. And so that was created, and that's what helped do away with the Natrona County lawsuit. And so everything that Lubnow is about to say about the Dispute Resolution Committee is a load of garbage. I mean, it is entirely, and he's a lawyer. See, and here's the funny thing. He knows that this is absolutely a thing, that private organizations have arbitration all of the time. There's arbitration between businesses. The Republican Party is a private corporation. And so, I mean, this is normal. But let's continue with what he says.
Because I didn't want to be a part of any organization that had a secret court system where the state chairman could appoint 5 people and they could meet in secret without rules of procedure, and you couldn't have a lawyer.
There are rules and procedures.
Unless they let you have a lawyer, and they could issue a money judgment against you. I just didn't think that was an appropriate thing, so I resigned. But there's an interesting study when parties are in a supermajority. They all tend to move into the same direction and adopt the same rules. Now, and I'm not saying that the Wyoming Republican Party is the Chinese communists.
No, that is what he's saying.
They're different. But there are a lot of surprising similarities between their management structure. They try to perpetuate their owners, the popular kids. It becomes not a rule of law organization. It becomes whatever the popular kids want is what happens.
Okay, all right. I can't take this guy anymore. But what he's saying is that, well, the Republican Party, it's just the popular kids that are running it, and really there's no process to it whatsoever, except, of course, that your precinct people, the lowest elected position in the Republican Party, those are elected. And then those people are representative of their precinct, or in other words, their neighborhood. And then those people elect their state level officials. Does any of this ringing a bell with anything that might sound familiar? And then those people go to the state central committee. And then it's the state central committee that elects the leadership of the Republican Party. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, it kind of sounds like exactly how our system works, except for the whole, the president is elected by the Electoral College. Other than that, pretty much the same. You see, what Tom Lubnow is attempting to do is to decrease the effectiveness of the Republican Party in the election, because he knows that there are a number of people that are running in this election that don't bear any resemblance to a Republican whatsoever. That most of them are liberal Democrats who have registered as a Republican so that they could win an election. And that is, I mean, they are the insiders. And I mean, that's the long and the short of it, my friends. And so anyway, I mean, it's people like Tom Lubnow, and you'll notice who the Cowboy has as their columnists. 2 people that were founding members of the Frontier Republicans. That should tell you volumes. Now, they do have Dave Simpson, and Dave Simpson is a conservative. But other than that, most of what you hear that comes out of the Cowboy, and certainly out of Jake's mouth, I wonder if he has to brush his teeth after all the bull crap that comes out of it. Anyway, absolutely ridiculous. He's a blowhard. And man, could you, you're not looking very good there, Tom. When you have an interview, maybe you should try to look presentable. I don't know, button up your shirt. Nobody wants to see that old man chest of yours. Man, figure it out. Get a handle on your life, examine your life decisions, and get with the program. Just admit that you're a Democrat. Moving on from the turkey vulture. This one's funny, too. The Wyoming PBS announces a rebrand to strengthen their identity. Okay, so first of all, their identity is PBS. It's a publicly funded media outfit that is entirely left-wing. The Wyoming PBS scheduled, like every election year, they have a debate, and it's almost always held at Sheridan College, at least, well, in the last couple of times it has been. So they are the ones that are holding the debate, and it's all state-funded media. And man, if you're a conservative, good luck getting any good coverage from them. You know what? Before I get into this, let's take another quick break, and we'll continue when we come back. So we'll just take one quick break, and then we'll talk about Wyoming PBS. Don't forget, at the top of the hour, Zeta Nuckolls Anderson is going to be joining us, and it's going to be a great discussion. She's running for the House of Representatives. We'll do that when we come back. I know that you think it's spring and that the weather is just going to continue to warm up and you don't have to worry about snow or ice or 30-degree temperatures anymore. In case you've forgotten, this is Wyoming, my friend, and that sort of thinking doesn't work here. 1 minute, it could be 75 and sunny, and 10 minutes later, snow. Whatever the weather, you need a pair of socks that'll keep your feet cool and dry even on the hottest of summer days. And if you happen to run into that spring snowstorm, you'll stay nice and toasty warm. Well, your feet anyway. To get you a pair, go to the website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. These are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election.
Siberia, Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada.
Straight to hell, Iceland,
France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the last year and a half been more than you could bear? Well, if it has, you've come to the right place. Call my friend Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy state politics is only going to get stronger. This program is expanding at an incredible rate. And it's all thanks to you, my friends. Thank you for watching. Thank you for everything you do for this program. I couldn't do it without you. I am eternally grateful. Now, I don't mean to sound like I've got this whole a true problem stuck in my craw, but I kind of do. You know, he got on my nerves and he's the one that put me in the Wayback Machine. And what we're trying to figure out in the comments is if you want to hear the story of Joanne True hanging out in the Speaker Pro Tem's office while she was a registered lobbyist. And I mean, the same thing as Pizzagate. You remember that? And it all boiled down to, and what kind of what truly set Shane off was this article that we published. And let me just see if I can show it to you here. Oh, yeah, here we go. This one is what ticked him off. That's a picture of Steve Harshman and J.D. Williams. And in the background is the Thyra office building down in Casper. That's a state facility. And they are handing out campaign signs on state property. But, of course, we all know that you're not supposed to conduct any political activity on state grounds, and you certainly can't pass out a check anymore, so says the governor in his attempt to absolutely infringe on the First Amendment. But that's a violation of Wyoming Statute 913-105, which that's what bars political activity from happening on state grounds. And so if you're interested, I thought I posted the link to that article. Well, let me try it again here if you didn't get it. So this is an interesting one. Steve Harshman, who is running for the superintendent of public instruction, he was handing out campaign signs. Let's see here. Campaign signs on state property. This is what old Shane True is irritated about. There we go. That should be able to get it to you. Click on that. It's a real quick read. But, I mean, it's clear as day, man. The same people who gave speech after speech after speech about how terrible handing out a campaign donation was, which, by the way, it's a constitutionally protected exercise of free speech. Those same people that were swearing up and down that was the end of the republic as we know it are the same folks that were handing out campaign signs on state property. Guess they never read the governor's executive order or remembered what they said on the floor. It was Steve Harshman and J.D. Williams both gave long-winded, and I mean they were emotionally involved in that one. And so, you know, I mean, I don't know what they were thinking. Well, I do, because they don't give a crap about the law, and they think that the law doesn't apply to them because they're the elitists. They're the ones that have been in power for forever. And the laws that are passed, they only apply to you. Oh, and conservatives. Yeah, conservatives have to follow the laws. Liberal elitists don't. Which, interestingly enough, and here's another question for Shane True. If indeed that everything I reported about Joanne, as we lovingly call her Joanne, everything I reported about her was not true, then why is it that right after that article came out, that all campaign activity in Clark Stith's drag show Clark's office stopped? Why is it that Joanne and old Red never set foot in that office again? If indeed everything I reported is not true, why did that happen? Oh, and then, of course, there's the other part of it where Joanne True gave a false report to Capitol Law Enforcement that I was harassing her. I took pictures of her in a public place when she was breaking the law. That's not harassment. That's called journalism. Shane, you should know a little bit about that. But anyway, tell me in the comments if you want to hear about that. Let's see here. We got about 7 minutes left. I think we can do this story before our guest gets here. So Wyoming PBS, they are rebranding themselves. And it's an article in Turkey Vulture. Here's how it starts. Quote, Wyoming PBS on Wednesday announced that it will be changing its name in the coming months to better reflect its mission as Wyoming's own public television station and storyteller. While the new name is still under consideration, the removal of PBS from the station's branding marks a significant step in ongoing efforts to strengthen local content, deepen community connections, and explore new opportunities for public media in Wyoming. Quote, this rebrand is a declaration of independence, not a departure from quality, Joanna Kale, CEO of Wyoming PBS, said. While we will continue to provide the full suite of PBS programming and member benefits like Passport, we want our local vision to be not to be limited by a national brand. We're Wyoming's storyteller, but we're still providing all of the content of PBS. We've really not changed anything about what it is that we do. We're not going to really, we're still going to do the same stuff. We're still going to be, hanging on for dear life to the Wyoming left. But we're going to rebrand it. So we're going to call it something else. It kind of reminds me of being a Democrat and identifying as a Republican. These Democrats, they all do the same stuff, right? They mess around with language and they just think that you're too stupid to realize what they're doing. Too bad for them. I think that that's going to change in this election. And here's the other thing. Wyoming citizens are smart enough to know that when all of the guns from every angle are pointed in one direction, maybe it's the people they're pointing the fingers at that actually have it right, and those people happen to be conservatives. And why is it that every media outlet in the state goes after the Freedom Caucus? Well, because, maybe they might lose funding. I don't know. But Wyoming PBS, they're going to rebrand. And they're not going to be they're going to be PBS still. It's just, that's not what their name is. It's like, being a redcoat. Let's see here. Continued PBS partnership. Wyoming PBS will remain a member station of PBS. So, there's not changing anything except for the name. They're going to offer PBS content to viewers. All current member benefits, everything else, it's going to be exactly the same. Approximately 60% of public television stations nationwide. And by the way, this is a fascinating thing. The left figured out, didn't figure out, they flipped out when conservatives said, you know what, PBS was defunded at the federal level, and so we're going to do the same thing here. They said they could not exist without public funding. Now, wait a minute. If the content that they produce is so valuable and that all of these programs are so beloved by Wyoming citizens, why is it that PBS could not compete in the free marketplace? Why could they not stand on their own? If all this stuff is so great and they have so many viewers and they're so necessary, why is it that they couldn't exist without state subsidies? Well, it's because their content sucks and nobody wants to watch it. If indeed they were valuable, they should stand on their own. In no way should government be supporting media, because it just becomes an extension of the government. And for those people who are in power and the media that you're supporting, it's going to try to it is the self-licking ice cream cone, if I've ever heard one, that Wyoming PBS pushes the liberal narrative because it's the liberals that insist on the PBS funding. And one of the funniest stories I heard during the last session was where they told the Appropriations Committee that they have to replace their tower. Okay, now, there might be a couple of stations that broadcast with the tower, but it's not that many. Most stations broadcast everything over the internet or satellite. It's all streaming. But they have to replace their tower because it's the same tower that they've had since the Cold War era. Now, how many millions of dollars have been funneled from the state of Wyoming, from your pocketbook, to Wyoming PBS? And they never once thought about replacing the tower. Why? Because they thought the money would always be there and they wouldn't have to replace the tower until it became non-functional. That's why they never replaced it. So this tower that they have at the University of Wyoming, it's older than dirt, and they didn't replace it because they thought that the money train would never stop. And so now they're using that as an excuse as to why they have to have the funding. It is absolutely the most disingenuous argument. In comparison to all the rest of the money that we spend in the state on frivolous and extraneous programs and outfits, it's actually pretty small. But it's still millions of dollars that go to Wyoming PBS. Now, the television station is run out of the University of Wyoming. So why is it that out of the millions and millions and millions of dollars that Wyoming citizens pay to the University of Wyoming, that they couldn't get their funding from them? Well, because the university, same reason, because the money train never stops and they just continually spend and spend and spend. And so those two entities have to be, if you're a liberal, right, we have to fund these things individually, because if we don't, we won't get as much money and we won't be able to have all of these DEI classes. It is absolutely 100% ridiculous. All right, we're at the top of the hour, so I'm overloading you with breaks here, but I'm going to take another one, and we'll get set up for the interview with my good pal from House District Number 1. We'll do that when we come back in just a sec. Yeah, stick with me. It's going to be a great interview. I love this lady to death. know that you think it's spring and that the weather is just going to continue to warm up and you don't have to worry about snow or ice or 30-degree temperatures anymore. In case you've forgotten, this is Wyoming, my friend, and that sort of thinking doesn't work here. 1 minute, it could be 75 and sunny, and 10 minutes later, snow. Whatever the weather, you need a pair of socks that'll keep your feet cool and dry even on the hottest of summer days. And if you happen to run into that spring snowstorm, you'll stay nice and toasty warm. Well, your feet anyway. To get you a pair, go to the website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. These are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election.
Siberia. Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada.
Straight to hell.
Iceland.
France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the last year and a half been more than you could bear? Well, if it has, you've come to the right place. Call my friend Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Welcome back to the program, my friends. Cowboy State Politics Live, Wyoming's conservative voice. That's right, my friends. We are the ones with the conservative banner. Nobody else has it. Certainly not the cow pie. God, it just make me want to barf. But anyway, welcome back to the show. Joining me now is my good friend from Crook County. How you doing this morning?
Hey, David, I'm doing great.
Excellent. So you get the same treatment that everybody does on this program. Why don't you take a couple minutes and tell my audience who you are? Tell us everything about you.
Okay. Well, I think the best way to define me is probably through the relationships that I have. And so I'll start with I'm a rancher's daughter. I am the wife of a hometown guy, Gary, that we've been married for over 28 years.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. I have 3 daughters. One is in heaven. 2 of them are very amazing people that we raised here in Crook County. We have been joined by 2 wonderful son-in-laws, and I have 3 little people who call me Amma, my grandchildren. And I think my most important relationship is that as a follower of Jesus Christ. So that kind of defines me. My background is in agriculture. I developed a really strong work ethic through being raised on a ranch that my grandfather Nuckolls established in 1917. And my brother now is on that ranch. So I get to go back and do some ranchy things every once in a while.
Ranchy things, I love it.
15 miles from there. So, but I come from pretty humble beginnings. My parents were hardworking, sacrificed a lot for the 5 children that they had. I'm the middle of 5. We had a very small house. The 3 girls slept in triple bunk beds in the living room. My brother slept in the bassinet, and my youngest brother slept in the dresser drawer in my parents' bedroom. So pretty humble beginnings. They came from hardworking families themselves, but they did a lot of sacrifices for us, and we had a magical upbringing that we can look back on now, surrounded by incredible beauty of the northeast corner of Wyoming and a lot of love that sometimes looked like hard work being expressed there. but they modeled involvement in the community. And my parents were very involved in the community and coming together as a community to help build those things that are necessary in a community, whether it be passing a school bond issue, agriculture cooperatives, school sports booster club. They used to feed both teams at the end of a game. So teams sat down together and had a meal together. Community centers, and they did all of that without government funding. They did it by coming together and figuring out how to meet those needs within the community. I graduated from Hewlett High School, went to Casper College for 2 years, received an associate's degree, and then I finished my bachelor's and got my master's at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. And then I always had this heartache for Wyoming and couldn't wait to come back to my beloved state. And so I did that as soon as I could. My husband introduced me to the love of the great outdoors. So we do a lot of backpacking, dry camping, technical rock climbing, just really enjoyed being out in nature. I jokingly say that I'm a professional volunteer because
you get volunteered for a lot of stuff.
Yes. And it was the agreement when my husband and I decided to start having children that even though I had more education, that it would make more sense for me to stay home and not work full time because
that's awesome.
It was very, yes.
You know, honestly, I think if two parents can do that, if they can pull that off, that is by far the best thing that you can do for your children.
Right. Right. And so that placed me in a position to be able to take my kids with me to do volunteer activities. That's now ingrained in them. So I feel like it's a third generation seeing my parents model that and us model that. And I do a lot of community service across multiple communities in our area, supporting things like veterans, senior citizens, student organizations, student events, food pantries, just to name a few. I've been a 4-H leader for 30 years.
Wow.
I serve on a foundation that is the giving arm for an electrical cooperative. And I've been on that board for 13 years. And so we do distribute grant funds out to communities in the northeast corner of Wyoming, those 5 counties. And we have just surpassed 3.1 million that we have pushed back into communities since 2007.
That's a big number.
So,
all right. So
not
to interrupt you, but
go ahead.
we're kind of limited on time a little bit. So it sounds like you're a super busy person. You got all these boards, all this volunteer work. You're pretty active in the Republican Party. So why the devil did you decide to run for the state legislature?
Well, a year ago in April, I was asked to consider it if there would be an opening in that position. And I decided that I would readjust my time commitments so that if that opportunity came and I decided to make that journey, I would be ready to do that. It's not because I was looking for something to do. I have
you got plenty of stuff to do.
But I did remove myself from some boards. I felt like I had done what I wanted to do on those boards. I had lots of leadership roles, which I took very seriously. I helped organizations rewrite their bylaws, rewrite their policies, tried to make them more function more appropriately. So we had some strategy meetings. We looked at possibilities of people, and it basically came down to, I want this opportunity to step into a bigger commitment to serving the citizens of House District 1. I already have a connection there with them, and I want to reinstate trust and hope in the process and just bring common sense to the legislature. There's been some good work that's been done, and I want to continue to do that. And at the end of the line, it ultimately came down to when people said why, I said, why not?
All right. Well, you know, a friend of mine, at least I think we're still pals, but former chairman of the party, Frank Ethorn, he once told me that, hey, if you're having trouble finding a candidate, maybe that candidate is you. And, you know, I've never forgotten that. And, you know, I firmly believe that, you know, you got to clean up your own backyard before you can, you know, ever worry about somebody else's. And, you know, a lot of the solutions to problems that everybody complains about on social media can be handled if you just pick yourself up and you go do it. And it sounds to me like that's the case here. So what you said you want to make some changes, bring common sense back. What are the issues specifically that you want to work on?
Well, I do think that Wyoming's best days are ahead of them. I think we get bogged down in lots of negative headlines, but the issues that people are telling me as I travel around and talk to people in our district, the number one thing that comes out is taxes, and specifically property taxes. Our county, Crook County, which is only a portion of my district, but the biggest portion, we got hit with a 76% increase in the last 5 years in property taxes. And so people are feeling that in their pocketbooks. And I think we need to take a really hard look at what we can do long-term, not short-term. And that probably looks like something very different than it is. I'm not saying I have the answers to that. I'm saying that we need to be looking at other possibilities for reform, something long-term that's going to help people so that they can have more money in their pocket.
Okay, so how do you balance, just quick question here while we're on the topic. So how do you balance the county's need for revenue? I mean, we can all agree that we like driving on nice, smooth roads, and it's probably pretty handy to have a police force and a fire department. And that all takes money. So how do you balance the need for revenue at the county and the city level? The cities, most of their cash is from sales tax, but how do you balance the need for local municipalities, or I guess I should say political subdivisions, to need revenue, and on the other hand, to give people a tax break? Because I mean, the two are not mutually exclusive. So how do you strike that balance?
Well, it's going to take some considerations on both sides of that. We need to be looking at efficiencies. We need to be seeing whether there's some transparencies that aren't out there, and also just accountability for the spending of the funds. And maybe it needs to be more of a, let's get the communities involved, let's get the citizens involved, like it used to be when we were figuring out how to do our own funding of things and not always relying on the government to come up with the solution or the money. So I think there's some room there to be able to balance those things out, which is, I kind of just talked about this. The second thing I think really needs to happen is we need to instill trust that our tax dollars are being spent wisely. And I think that the transparency, I see it on a local level here, the transparency, the accountability just isn't forthcoming like I would like to see it, because I think people deserve to know. And I think the trust has eroded on within the government, or toward the government, about how they spend our money. So that would be something I'm really looking at, how we can increase that, rebuilding that confidence and trust in the government through greater accountability and transparency, keeping government small, in check, and slowing that growth down, not just the runaway train.
So where could we reduce? You say we need to make government smaller. Where would you reduce government?
We have to start with looking at efficiencies and see.
Okay, well, be specific. What does that mean? I mean, are we cutting programs? Are we cutting services? What are we doing?
I think it's looking at each department and see if there's an overlap in services, if there's an overlap in employees doing multiple jobs, how we can strategically align that so that people are doing the job and doing it well. My dad used to say that government tends to just hire another person if the job isn't getting done. And so we need to just really see if somebody's not doing their job, then there's probably some hard discussions that need to happen. That's the way it is in the private sector. If you don't do your job, you probably are not going to have that job.
Well, yeah, it's what what Agent 29 always calls the bee watchers. And there's that great Dr. Seuss book where eventually you have the bee watchers who are watching the bee watchers. And I mean, it's funny, but it's actually kind of true when you talk about government. So I just spent, before you came on the program, I just spent probably 45 minutes talking about some of the other candidates in statewide elections claiming to be Republican when they're really not. Where are you on the political spectrum? Are you a Republican? Are you Democrat? Where are you at?
Well, I'm this Republican. I am a platform Republican. And I don't say that lightly. I served on the 2022 platform committee at the state convention, and we went in wanting to reduce the number of planks in the platform, and we actually added 3, I think. But it has changed very little. A little bit of tweaking in the 24 convention, none this year. So I think those are just the timeless truths, like it says, that represent the grassroots people. That's where those platforms came from. I can support what is in there. They're high-level principles, and I don't understand why people would not agree with what is in there. So, yeah.
The question that always runs through my head is, so you say that you support 80% of the platform, which is what the bylaws say. Mm-hmm. So what's the other 20% that these folks don't support? I mean, can you tell me which ones those are? And I have never gotten an answer to that. And yes. I think that, as far as, the label Republican, we just kind of throw that around. And, I'm glad that you held up the platform. See, I got one too. All right. So then the follow-up question to that is there a difference between being a Republican and being a conservative? Are those two things different? And where would you put yourself in those two?
Well, I think the word conservative gets co-opted to be many different things. And I think people can be financially or fiscally conservative, or they can be socially conservative. And so in my mind, I might think people are both, but maybe they're not really. And so I would say I am conservative in both of those areas. I care very much about where money is being spent, if it's being spent wisely, especially when it's not your money, when it's the taxpayers' money you're supposed to be taking care of, because the government isn't growing any money on trees anywhere. So, but also just socially, which means obviously that I support life, guns, Constitution, citizen legislature. Very important to me that it's a grassroots involvement in the legislature, in forming our party, what we believe in. And I think that that's what the people of Wyoming have spoken. They have said that that's what they want. That's what they come to the convention with and continue to uphold.
One of the charges that's been leveled at, I think it's directed at the House of Representatives, is that there were a lot of bills that we just didn't need to pass, that there's national issues that, that's all you guys focus on. So the question for you is, were there any bills that conservatives focused on in the last legislative session that you think maybe could have been dealt with later, maybe we didn't need them? Are there any bills that you wouldn't have wanted to discuss?
No, I don't think so. And I have to really applaud the House for doing their due diligence and getting through all of the bills. I mean, they could have taken the easy road and said, nope, we're calling it a day and we're going to be done.
And go have pizza.
I think that really showed the character of the people there, that they really wanted to represent and get through the bills and hear what legislators had brought forth to discuss and make amendments or not pass or whatever needed to be done.
What's the proper role of government?
As small as possible, to just do those things that we can't do individually, that they can do better for us, but just as small as possible. I don't know where we got off rail. You're the historian. You can probably fill that in a little bit better than me, but I just see it continuing to grow, and I don't see an equal amount of benefit from it. It seems to just be getting more boggled down. Inefficiency is huge to me.
Talk to me about and there's a couple of big ticket items that I think pretty much all the conservative candidates are getting hit with. One of those is recalibration. So the little tweak that we did to the school funding model, where are you at on the recalibration bill?
Well, I think that anytime you make a change, people's hair is going to be on fire. It just is. And I think if it had been done like it was supposed to be done every 5 years, maybe another change would have been smaller. It maybe not have been such a big concern to people. But the fact is that the people in this legislature did it. They did what they were supposed to do. They did what their calling was from the court system or from the statute to do this recalibration. I've listened to multiple town halls explaining about it, and I've also just seen an unbelievable amount of misinformation. And I think the thing that disheartens me the most is people's unwillingness to look at facts and try and see what was done, and maybe have a discussion on what could we do a little differently. Maybe some things that was fallout with things that they didn't plan on, they didn't anticipate, but the unwillingness to even have that conversation, to come to town halls, to have a discussion is just mind-boggling to me, quite frankly. I think teachers need to be paid and need to be paid well. I have teachers in my family, and that's how we're going to improve our education system, is we attract really top quality teachers, and you do that through money.
Okay. Question from one of our viewers. Where do you stand on school choice and ever increasing spending on public schools? And that's Patrick wants to know that.
Okay. Well, sure, I'll answer that. So I think people think I'm against public schools because we chose to not have our children in the traditional public school full time. We were involved with public school because we were in a virtual education program, and we were pioneers. We were some of the first people to do virtual education, but we also, and so we are tied to a public school. So you follow the same rules as the public school system. And we did participate, my kids did participate in programs and activities at the local school level, which they are allowed to do. I am totally for school choice because I am for students. And when I hear people say it's all about the students, I can tell you from firsthand experience, it wasn't all about the students. It was about the money. And we had a lot of pushback. Like I said, we were pioneers, and that phrase was coined by my daughter when she testified in front of the Legislative Education Committee as a first grader. She's the one who came up with that term. And it was a learning experience. It was a tough curve, but I think the long-term results were they got a really balanced view and a good education. My older daughter was the first one in the state of Wyoming to graduate, having done all of her education virtually. So she went on, both of my daughters went on to work for the company that their school was through at the corporate level. And we were in no man's land with that virtual education. And that's why school choice is so important to me. I want to support people's rights to homeschool, to participate in virtual education, to do public school, because it's best, whatever's best for the student. That's where I'm at. And we had a great principal when we were at the virtual school it's virtual program. So, and she said, it doesn't matter if it's going to cost money or somebody's going to graduate early, whatever's best for the student. And her attitude was just spot on to me.
Great. All right. So he's got a follow-up question. What about the private school stipends? And I'm assuming, Patrick, you're referring to the Steamboat Scholarship.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I had family members ready to participate in that, so they were pretty sad when that didn't happen. The money is not going to affect the education funding. It comes from a whole different pot of money. I think we need to give students the opportunity to be able to have some of those dollars spent in what parents how they choose to educate their children. As a virtual school family, we didn't fit into homeschooling. We didn't fit into traditional public schooling. So I just felt like we were, again, in no man's land and got a lot of pushback. And I was glad to see the legislature maybe actually looking at how they could develop stronger education ties for those students who don't want to be in any of those things.
Okay. So one of my difficulties with that whole bill is I question the constitutionality of it. I think that there's a very credible argument to be made that it's not constitutional. I mean, there's two places in the Wyoming Constitution that say that no state money can go to anybody that is not under the direct control of the state. So there's the first one. And then there's the other passage that talks about no money can go to a sectarian organization. And a lot of private schools are Christian based. There's one here in Sheridan that is a fabulous high school Valor Academy, it's called. No, they didn't pay for that ad. But they just graduated their first, 4-year, their first 4-year students.
Mm-hmm.
So the question for you is, do you think that bill is constitutional? And a corollary to that would be, how are you going to make a decision in the legislature, if you're successful, when there's a bill that is good, that kind of fits your own personal agenda that you like, but it happens to be unconstitutional? How are you going to deal with that? And do you think that this bill is constitutional?
I'm not going to be able to speak to the constitutionality of that bill because I have not studied that enough to be able to look at that avenue of it.
That's fair enough.
But absolutely. There are probably going to be things that constituents ask you to support that you may not believe in personally, but that my job is to represent my district and what's best for the state of Wyoming. And so the constitutionality aspect, I would leave to trying to get that information from LSO and people who are more familiar with the constitutionality of how that would fit in, and being able to just ask questions about that.
Okay. Question at the local level, and then I know I've kept you a little bit longer than I had intended, but I mean, hey, you and I can talk for hours. So anyway, why not continue? But another question is, across the state, towns and counties have given a tremendous amount of money to alleged nonprofit organizations. And they do that through a variety of means, excise tax funds and, excess money from the general fund, whatever. So, again, 2 questions. Do you think that we ought to rein some of that in? And secondly, how do you do that?
I'm not going to be able to address that because I'm not quite sure
fair enough.
about that. So I don't have an agenda or any legislation I'm carrying in, into this legislature. My job is to listen to my constituents and ask questions, seek to understand, get the best information that I possibly can, and hopefully be able to explain if I don't make a voting decision that my constituents expect. I would be able to back up why I did that.
Okay.
I realize in the legislature they get information that we're not privy to necessarily out just in the doing our everyday life, right? And so, but being able to come back and inform my constituents would be important about why I made those decisions.
Okay, we've got a pretty active audience today. So there's another question from Samantha. She wants to know, do you feel data centers based in larger cities within Wyoming should share their taxes to smaller towns? So I guess, in other words, what she's asking is, the taxes that are paid by these big data centers, should a portion of that be diverted to other smaller communities that, perhaps don't have a data center?
That is a really good question. And
She usually asks good ones.
I don't know that I've been thinking about that. I expected it to come with, water use, electric use, those type of things.
Well, let's talk about it.
Well, I think there needs to be more questions asked. I think there needs to be definitely some understandings, transparent, upfront information about them. I know there's a lot of negative information out there. I have some concerns myself. I had somebody ask me if they thought that the Chinese were infiltrating all the negative information about data centers. I have
Probably.
no idea. I don't know about that tax thing. I would really have to give some thought to that about.
Okay, so let's talk about data centers in general. That's been in the news, pretty heavy the last few weeks.
Right.
So one big question that I have is about water. So you can't cool all that equipment without water, and you're a rancher's daughter. You know how important water is to agriculture in the state. So should we have a moratorium on data centers, or should we do anything with them, or should we just let them pop up as they are?
Oh, I think that we need to maybe slow down a little bit and see what the long term of this is going to be. Our resources are so critical in Wyoming, and as you know, legislators have been back in DC really getting some support from our energy legacy industries and we're in a position to really be able to capitalize on that. But water is huge, and electrical use is huge. And if we don't have a clear path and a clear agreement, not just a promise, I think we're stepping into some kind of scary areas in allowing just carte blanche development without some guardrails.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So last question, and this was one that just infuriates me, is the Wyoming Business Council. So there were some attempts in the legislative session to kind of rein it back. Well, I mean, there was an attempt to do away with it entirely, and they eventually said, well, we're going to reel it back in. So is there a role for government in business development?
I think it's better done just letting the market determine who's going to be.
This is why you and I are friends. I mean,
yeah. So I think again, it comes back to efficiencies. Why are we doing this? Is it just because it's always been done, or did we start something and it got off rail and there wasn't oversight and looking into what's happening? When people are really upset about being questioned about things, that doesn't set a real good tone for trust. And I'm fine with people questioning things. I might not have the answer, like today. I might not always have the answer.
No, it's all right. Albert Einstein said that the most intelligent answer you could ever give is "I don't know." And it's much better to do that and go find out the answer than it is to just shoot from the hip. Right. All right. So I've taken up enough of your time this morning. If my viewers want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Yeah, I would love to have people join the winning team. They can go to my website. It's Zeta 4WY, and it's the word FOR, not the number. And they can check out how to contact me there. I'm going to be traveling around in my district. If people would like to contact me, my phone number is on there. Email is on there. And I just really want to encourage people to get out the vote. I'm just shocked. South Dakota vote was so low in the county just across the line from us. But I really want people to know I've got their back. I'm willing to listen and bring common sense and just really do my research while I'm down in Cheyenne.
All right, Zeta. I appreciate you taking the time this morning. Thanks for being a good sport and let me beat up on you a little bit.
No worries.
I appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll talk again as the election goes on. So thank you once again.
Thank you.
All right, that was my pal, Zeta Nuckolls Anderson, and she's running for House District 1 it's basically Crook County, but it kind of overlaps a little bit. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about how big the media is in Wyoming. How much of Wyoming's economy do you think that the media takes up? Do you think it's a small percentage? Do you think it's a little bit bigger than some other industries? But we're going to talk about that when we come back, because I think what I've got is going to kind of blow your mind a little bit. And so we'll talk about it when we come back.
Are you watching what's happening in our country and asking, what can I do? Join the John Birch Society in Salt Lake City, June 6th, for a powerful one-day conference. The day includes a host of respected speakers, 2 meals, and meaningful connections. You'll gain clarity on the issues and walk away with practical steps you can take to your community. Reserve your seat today at jbs.org/SLC26. That's jbs.org/SLC26.
One of those speakers at the Salt Lake City event will be yours truly. That's right, my friends. I'm one of the keynote speakers at the JBS 2026 conference. So join me in Salt Lake City if you want to see me. The following ad was paid for by Brent Bean for Governor.
You won't find him leading a horse out of a barn or leaning against a corral with the sun setting behind him, because Wyomingites don't need a candidate who creates a good photo op. What you will find is a hard-working, experienced leader who believes Wyoming should always come first. A conservative grounded in strong values and steady principles. Ready to lead Wyoming the right way. Brent Behan for governor.
Today's program is also brought to you by Morton Buildings. If you're in the market for any type of building for your property, you need to call Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They're the best in metal building construction, and they've been doing it longer than anybody else around. So it doesn't matter if it's a garage or a barn or maybe something bigger, like a roping arena or maybe a giant warehouse for your business. The two guys you need to call first are Marcos and Jesse. Again, their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out on their website, mortonbuildings.com. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Thursday. It is Open Line Thursday, even though we haven't had anybody call in. Phone lines are still open. We've got a little bit of time left in the show. Just kind of, again, give you kind of a heads up on what's happening kind of around. So we won't have a program tomorrow because I'll be on a plane headed for Salt Lake City. And if you haven't seen it yet, the poll for the Open Range Records High Plains primary debate is active, and it's on the Open Range Record website. And what we're doing is we're running a poll to determine the top 5 candidates who will be invited to participate in our debate. It is impossible to hold a fair debate with 10 people on the stage all at once. I think all of us remember the 2016 Republican primary debates. They were a fiasco. And really, they weren't a debate at all. I mean, yeah, you got a little bit of back and forth, a little bit of crosstalk, but that was it. With that many people, you just don't have the time to delve into any issue. And so we don't want that. So we're running a poll, and it's going to be up to you to decide who you want to see on the debate stage. And as it relates to the venue, we've rented out the Rialto Theater in Casper. It's a cute little venue. I think it holds around 175 people. But you can attend it in person, or we're going to live stream it to all of our platforms. And so you'll be able to watch it online. And so if there's a particular person you want to hear from, go to the openrangerecord.com, and you can, and let me just show you the poll while we're doing this. And that way, let's see here. Yeah. So this one, hold on just a second. And it's going to be a fantastic event, I think. Let's see here now, back to the screen. See, this is why I need Ken to get back to work, so I don't have to do all this, and he can get all this figured out. Here we go. Here it is. Okay, so this is what the piece looks like on the Open Range Record, and you scroll down, and there's just a little bit of my commentary about why we're doing this, what we're doing, and then there's the poll, and you select 5 people and who you want to see on the debate stage, and so you can only vote once, even though the poll will say, yeah, we've recorded. If you try to vote multiple times, it's not going to be recorded. So just vote once. You're the 5 people that you want to see on the debate stage on July 16th. And so anyway, do that. Go participate in the poll. We want to hear from you. So how big do you think the Wyoming media is? in Wyoming. I mean, we have a lot of industries in Wyoming, mining, extractive industries. We'll just lump all those together. Of course, agriculture, tourism, all of those are big. And I guess before I get to how big the media is, do you know what the number one industry in Wyoming is? It's not our extractive industries. It's not oil and gas. It's not coal. It's not any of those things. It's not tourism. It's government. More people work for government in the state of Wyoming than any other industry. As I feel like a broken record every time I tell you this, but there are towns in Wyoming where the vast majority of the population works for government in one way, shape, or form. Either it's city or it's county or it's the U.S. Forest Service or the BLM or it's the state. Maybe they're a highway patrolman. But there are a lot of towns and communities where most people work for government. So government is number one. Last on the list is actually agriculture. Agriculture is number 15. On the top 15 list of things that make money in the state, agriculture is number 15. And their workforce represents 1 point. And this is all from Wyoming by the Numbers. My pal, B. Alfred Marshall. You can see his articles. You see him on Facebook, and occasionally I post one on the Open Range Record. But if you want to know, if you want to have the numbers down when, anything about the state of Wyoming, go to the Facebook page, Wyoming by the Numbers, and you'll have more data than any of the politicians have in their back pocket. I mean, it's a super useful Facebook page to look at before you go to a debate or any of these candidate forums or, these open house things that they hold. But anyway, so the Wyoming media ranks above agriculture in the state of Wyoming. Think about that. How many industries we have in Wyoming, and it's actually motion pictures, publishing, and broadcasting industry is a larger industry by GDP than agriculture in Wyoming. I mean, it is a big deal. And of course, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm saying it's an interesting number. And, the media industry, even in a small state like Wyoming, is growing exponentially. And most of the growth is not from the top. It's not from the Cowboy or the Pravda on the Platte, Red Star Tribune. It's not from any of those people. It's from smaller companies like mine, like the Open Range Record, like independent folks that just say, you know what, I'm going to be a journalist and I'm going to start writing and I'm going to sell some advertising on, on my respective website. But the media as a percentage of the GDP in Wyoming is bigger than agriculture. Holy crap, my friends. And if you want more data like that, go to Wyoming by the Numbers on Facebook, and I'll probably publish a piece from him this afternoon. So you remember Jim Acosta? I know. We've all tried to forget him. I mean, it's although when there were press conferences and Jim Acosta was around, at least, I mean, they're always interesting with Donald Trump, but with that guy in the room, we got to see Trump just bash the media. And in case you had forgotten, here's a little trip down memory lane for you. And this is one of Trump's early press conferences. This is the one where he calls him a terrible person, but check it out.
In the midterms.
Here we go.
If you don't mind, Mr. President, that this caravan was an invasion. As you know, Mr. President,
I consider it to be an invasion.
As you know, Mr. President, caravan was not an invasion. It's a group of migrants moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
Thank you for telling me that. I appreciate it.
Why did you characterize it as such?
Because I consider it an invasion. You and I have a difference of opinion.
But do you think that you demonized immigrants
in
this election to
try to keep them? I want them to come into the country, but they have to come in legally. They have to come in, Jim, through a process. I want it to be a process, and I want people to come in, and we need the people.
Your campaign.
Wait. You know why we need the people, don't you? Because we have hundreds of companies moving in. We need the people.
They're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's
not
an invasion.
Honestly, you know what?
Away. That's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN. Right. And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President.
Here's the best part.
That's enough.
Ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr. President,
that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that that you may have.
I'm not concerned about anything with
that you
the
may have
Russian
indictments coming
investigation
down.
because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
And she just takes it from him.
Mr. President.
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible.
Okay, all right. So that's a trip down memory lane with Jim Acosta. Well, he's back at it. He doesn't work for CNN anymore. He quit, some high-minded, I don't know, he's a journalist. I don't even know why he quit. Actually, what they did is they took his time slot away and moved him to another time slot, and he was all offended. And he couldn't take a demotion. He's still making like millions of dollars, and he couldn't take the demotion, and so he quit. And that's what these liberal elites do, is they're so important. Yesterday I told you about Scott Pelley and how he got fired from 60 Minutes. Well, he's back at it, and Acosta is claiming that Trump is trying to create a media conglomerate, a state-run media conglomerate. Now, really, what is happening is all of the state funding and the access, and that's one of the biggest parts, is access that you have to have if you're going to run any sort of journalistic endeavor, right? You got to be able to talk to politicians. You got to have access. They've got to be able to pick up they need to pick up your phone call when you call with a question, and so you build relationships. Well, the left in this country has dominated the media landscape for so long that if you're a conservative, it's really hard to break into it. And so one of the things that's been happening, and I think this is really cool, you have people like Barry Weiss, who started the Free Press. Generally speaking, I agree with a lot of the stuff on the Free Press. It's more long-form journalism than it is this soundbite media culture that we're in right now. But there are media outlets like the Open Range Record that are pushing the envelope, that are trying to change the conversation, and so that we get a different perspective. And those people who are on the liberal left, well, they don't like that because we're taking their power away from them. And and if you need any evidence of that, look at the last couple of elections in Wyoming. I don't think it can be. I don't think you can deny that this program has had an outsized effect. I told you earlier about Chicom Sam, and if you look at all the comments on my various Facebook, social media channels, when they're going after you, that you're over the target. That you're making an impact, and I can tell you for a fact that, looking at the analytics from the Open Range Record, they are absolutely tremendous. So and here's the odd thing: if you just report the facts, and you just try to report it as straight as you can, here are the facts, here's what happened, it will be perceived as conservative media, because the American public is so I don't want to say indoctrinated, but that's kind of the way that things are, so used to seeing liberal reporting that a lot of people assume that that's the truth. And so when you actually report the facts, hey, this is actually what happened, here's the picture to go along with it, it's perceived as liberal. So the reaction to that from people like Jim Acosta, who, he's one of these media elites, then they have to cast it as some sort of, state-run conglomerate conspiracy that here he is on the Communist News Network.
What do you think the messages that they're clearly trying to send?
Excuse me.
I think the message that the people at CBS are sending people like Barry Weiss is be afraid. We are in control. We are in charge. And as Don was saying, make no mistake, they don't care about the ratings. They don't care about making money. This is an ideological and partisan political project on the part of the Ellisons, the Trump-friendly Ellisons who now control Paramount, who, by the way, are trying to take control of WBD and CNN and turn it into this giant media conglomerate that will essentially act like a state media organization in support of Donald Trump.
You mean like you guys?
And I think the folks at CBS, people like Barry Weiss and so on, they need to look at themselves in the mirror and ask themselves the question, is what I'm doing good for America? Is what I'm doing good for democracy? is what I'm doing good for the free press? And I think the answer is unquestionably no. And when Scott Pelley,
why does he say that?
Scott Pelley is saying that the people
stop. So why is he saying that? Is it good for the country? What's happening now? And just a minute ago, I explained to you what's happening is that there's a proliferation of independent news sources like this. This is an opinion show. Okay, it's my opinion. And the Open Range Record, that is a news platform that I go to great pains to label, and it doesn't take that long, but I make sure that if it's opinion, it's labeled as opinion. If it's news, it's labeled as news. And I can tell you for a fact that it is really easy to find somebody that will write opinion. Everybody's got an opinion. That part is easy. What is hard is getting people to write straight news. This is what happened. These are the facts. That part, that whole part of journalism, I'm not going to say that it's a lost art, but it is becoming a lost art. Well, what is actually a threat to the country is a media, conglomerate. I don't want to use the word conglomerate because Jim Acosta did that. Media behemoth. Maybe that's a good way to put it. But they're all in the tank together. They all have, pretty much the same line of thinking. Trump bad, liberals good, overspending good, conservatism bad, free enterprise bad, government state-controlled business good. I mean, they all have the same line of thinking. CNN, CBS, and CBS, they're kind of turning the corner a little bit with hiring Barry Weiss, who that's the gal that started the Free Press. But what they are claiming, and liberals always do this, they accuse conservatives of what they are doing. So if liberals are doing something and they accuse conservatives of doing the same thing, that's exactly what they're trying to do. I mean, it seems backwards. So when Jim Acosta says, well, it's these conservatives, they're creating a media conglomerate. It's going to be state-run. Really what he's doing is projecting because, prior to, and still during the Trump administration, with the exception of a couple of media outlets, Newsmax, Fox News, though sometimes they slip into Liberalville, with the exception of those smaller entities, the rest of them, ABC, CBS, CNN, always broadcasting communism, Ms. Now, what a stupid name. Anyway, all of them provide one perspective. It's not news. It's what I've termed opinion journalism, which, by the way, is the same thing that you get from the cow pie. If it's political, they're not reporting the facts. Not reporting the facts at all. What they are doing is giving their opinion and wrapping it up to look like news. And, and no matter how much they protest, that is exactly what they're doing. Yesterday, I played you the interview, or part of the interview, between Claire McFarland and Chuck Gray. Now, admittedly, Chuck's kind of hard to handle sometimes in an interview. I mean, the guy can talk. And so, if you've got questions you got to ask him, you got to be in control of that interview. Well, you see, the liberal media and Claire McFarland are not used to that. She just writes something, and you can read it. You can read the bias in the article. And again, Claire, if you're looking for proof of what we're saying, go read your own writing, and tell me, when have you been critical of one of the redcoats, one of the moderates that you call it? There is no such thing as a moderate, by the way. Everybody is, if you have an opinion, if there's something you believe in, you're not moderate about it. Okay, that's a word that they use to describe liberal Republicans. That's what that is. But find one article for me that you've written that is critical of one of the redcoats. Now, do the same thing with conservatives. You'll find hundreds that Claire McFarland has written herself. So, it's this whole media thing. I'm actually pretty excited about newer forms of media that have come up. When I started Cowboy state politics, there was no conservative media in the state. There wasn't anybody offering the conservative opinion. It was me. But since that time, and I'm not taking credit for all of it, I'm saying that since that time, there have been a lot of different people that have been writing themselves, starting their own podcasts, making their own platforms, using their social media accounts. I think that's tremendous. The more voices, the better. The way that you find out what works is through the free marketplace of ideas. And you don't have a free marketplace if it's one-sided. If it's just the liberals and it's just the Tribune Eagle, the Pravda on the Platte, Red Star Tribune, and the Cowboy, they all think pretty much the same thing. And you can read their writing. It's almost always from the same perspective. If that's all you got, well, you don't have a marketplace of ideas. And you end up with just one line of thinking. And there's a reason why newspapers are losing circulation. It's because people are not going to buy their crap. Well, and, the proliferation of online media. Nobody really wants to buy a newspaper that's old news, right? You can go online and see what's happening right now. Well, anyway, my friends, that'll pretty much do it for today's program. I think we had a good show today and a good week on the show. Thank you for watching. Every time you watch or listen to an edition of Cowboy State Politics, make sure that you like it, that you share it, that you forward it to all your friends. And if it's on the podcast, make sure you leave me a review. I know everybody says that, but it really does help. So, my friends, I'm off to Salt Lake City to hang out with a bunch of people that believe in the Constitution. I'll be back next week. Hopefully, Agent 29 will be back with us. I know he's almost made it home from his venture into the swamp, so hopefully he'll be back next week. I've got a lot of great interviews lined up in the coming days and weeks on the program, so I always get excited about election time because I get to talk to a lot of different people, and we're going to continue doing that. So for now, my friends, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. Have a good rest of your week and weekend, my friend. We'll see you next week.